November graveyard. The scene stands stubborn. Skinflint trees hoard last leaves, won't mourn, wear sackcloth, or turn to elegiac dryads, and dour grass guards the hard-hearted emerald of its grassiness, however the grandiloquent mind may scorn such poverty. So no dead men's cries flower forget-me-nots between the stone paving this grave ground. Here's honest rot to unpick the elaborate heart, pare bone free of the fictive vein. When one stark skeleton bulks real, all saints' tongues fall quiet. Flies watch no resurrections in the sun. At the essential landscape stare till your eyes foist a vision dazzling on the wind. Whatever lost ghosts flare, damned, howling in their shrouds across the moor, rave on the leash of the starving mind which peoples the bare room, the blank, untenanted air. On the difficulty of conjuring up a dryad. Ravening through the persistent bric-a-brac of blunt pencils, rose-sprigged coffee cup, postage stamps, stacked books, clamor and yop, neighborhood cock-crow, all nature's prodigal back-talk, the vaunting mind snubs impromptu spiels of wind and wrestles to impose its own order on what is. With my fantasy alone brags the importunate head, arrogant among rook-tongued spaces, sheep greens, bin falls. I shall compose a crisis to stun sky blackout, drive gibbering mad trout, cock, ram that bulk so calm on my jealous stare, self-sufficient as they are. But no hocus-pocus of green angels damasked with dazzle threadbare eye. My trouble, doctor, is I see a tree, and that damn scrupulous tree won't practice wiles to beguile sight, e.g. by cant of light concoct a Daphne. My tree stays tree. However I wrench obstinate bark and trunk to my sweet will, no luminous shape steps out radiant in limb, eye, lip, to hoodwink the honest earth, which point-blank spurns such fiction as nymphs. Cold vision will have no counterfeit palmed off on it. No doubt now in dream-propertied fall, some moon-eyed, star-lucky sleight-of-hand man watches my jilting lady squander coin, gold-leaf-stocked ditches, and the opulent air goes studded with seed, while this beggared brain hatches no fortune, but from leaf, from grass, thieves what it has. Medusa. Off that land spit of stony mouth plugs, eyes rolled by white sticks, ears cupping the sea's incoherences, you house your unnerving head, god ball, lens of mercies. Your stooges plying their wild cells in my keel's shadow, pushing by like hearts. Red stigmata at the very center, riding the ripped tide to the nearest point of departure, dragging their Jesus hair. Did I escape, I wonder? My mind winds to you, old barnacled umbilicus, Atlantic cable, keeping itself, it seems, in a state of miraculous repair. In any case, you are always there, tremulous breath at the end of my line, curve of water upleaping to my water rod, dazzling and grateful, touching and sucking. I didn't call you at all. Nevertheless, you steamed to me over the sea, fat and red, a placenta paralyzing the kicking lovers. Cobra light, squeezing the breath from the blood bells of the fuchsia. I could draw no breath, dead and monoless, overexposed like an X-ray. That martyr's smile, that loony pivot, that stellar jellyhead, and a million little suckers loving me. Who do you think you are? Communion wafer? Blubbery Mary? I shall take no bite of your body, bottle in which I live, gas-live Vatican. I am sick to death of hot salt. Green as eunuchs your wishes hiss at my sins. Off, Ely tentacle. There is nothing between us. Stopped dead. A squeal of brakes, or is it a birth cry? And here we are, hung out over the dead drop, Uncle, pants factory fatso, millionaire, and you out cold beside me in your chair. The wheels, two rubber grubs bite their sweet tails. Is that Spain down there? Red and yellow, two passionate hot metals, writhing and sighing. What sort of a scenery is it? It isn't England, it isn't France, it isn't Ireland. It's violent. We're here on a visit, with a goddamn baby screaming off somewhere. There's always a bloody baby in the air. I'd call it a sunset, but whoever heard a sunset yowl like that? We're sunk in your 7 chins, still as a ham. Who do you think I am, Uncle? Sad Hamlet with a knife? Where do you stash your life? In your breast, in your vest, in your haunch, in your paunch, that snail thrill of breath, that start of the heart. You see, I see a sort of a twig that might just hold me, but not you. You're too big. Is it a penny, a pearl, your soul? I'll carry it off like a rich, pretty girl. Simply open the door and step out of the car and live in Gibraltar on air. Fever, 103. Pure, what does it mean? The tongues of hell are dull, dull as the triple tongues of dull fat Cerberus who wheezes at the gate. Incapable of licking clean the ague tendon, the sin. O Otto da Fe, the purple men, gold-crusted, thick with spleen, sit with their hooks and crooks and stoke the light. The tinder cries, the indelible smell of a snuffed candle. Love, love,
The low smokes roll from me like Isidora's scarves. I'm in a fright one scarf will catch an anchor in the wheel. Such yellow sullen smokes make their own element. They will not rise, but trundle round the globe, choking the aged and the meek, the weak hothouse baby in its crib, the ghastly orchid hanging its hanging garden in the air. Devilish leopard, radiation turned it white and killed it in an hour. Greasing the bodies of adulterers like Hiroshima ash and eating in the sin, the sin. Darling, all night I have been flickering, off, on. The sheets grow heavy as a lecher's kiss. 3 days, 3 nights. Lemon water, chicken water, water make me wretch. I am too pure for you or anyone. Your body hurts me as the world hurts God. I am a lantern. My head a moon of Japanese paper, my gold-beaten skin infinitely delicate and infinitely expensive. Does not my heat astound you, and my light? All by myself I am a huge camellia, glowing and coming and going, flush on flush. I think I am going up. I think I may rise. The beads of hot metal fly, and I, love, I am a pure acetylene virgin, attended by roses, by kisses, by cherubim, by whatever these pink things mean. Not you, nor him, nor him, nor him. Myselves dissolving, old whore petticoats, to paradise. Amnesiac. No use whistling for lioness. Sea cold, it certainly is. Take a look at the white high berg of his forehead. There's where it sunk. The blue, green, grey, indeterminate gilt sea of his eyes washing over it, and a round bubble popping upward from the mouths of bells, people, and cows. The Lionians had always thought heaven would be something else, but with the same faces, the same places, the same shells on the same mantle, next to the same pot dog, the same clock. It was not a shock. The clear, green, quite breathable atmosphere, gold grits underfoot, and the spidery water dazzle on field and street. It never occurred that they had been forgot, that the big God had lazily closed one eye and let them slip over the English cliff and under so much history. They I did not see him smile, turn like an animal in his cage of ether, his cage of stars. He'd had so many wars. The white gape of his mind was the real tabula rasa. No use now begging, recognize. There is nothing to do with such a beautiful blank but smooth it. Name, house, car, keys, the little toy wife erased. Sigh, sigh. 4 babies and a cocker. Nurses the size of worms and a minute doctor tuck him in. Old happenings peel from his skin. Down the drain with all of it. Hugging his pillow like the red-headed sister he never dared to touch, he dreams of a new one, barren, the lot are barren, and of another color. How they'll travel, 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 scenery sparking off their brother-sister rears a comet tail, and money the sperm fluid of it all. One nurse brings in a green drink, one a blue. They rise on either side of him like stars. The 2 drinks flame and foam. Oh, sister, mother, wife, sweet Lethe is my life. I am never, never, never coming home. Cut. What a thrill. My thumb instead of an onion. The top quite gone, except for a sort of a hinge of skin, a flap like a hat, dead white. Then that red plush. Little pilgrim, the Indians axed your scalp. Your turkey wattle carpet rolls straight from the heart. I step on it, clutching my bottle of pink fizz. Celebration, this is. Out of a gap, 1,000,000 soldiers run, redcoats, every one. Whose side are they on? Oh, my homunculus, I am ill. I have taken a pill to kill the thin, papery feeling. Oh, saboteur, kamikaze man, the stain on your gauze Ku Klux Klan babushka darkens and tarnishes. And when the bald pulp of your heart confronts its small mill of silence, how you jump, trepin veteran, dirty girl, thumb stump. Poppies in October. Even the sun clouds this morning cannot manage such skirts, nor the woman in the ambulance whose red heart blooms through her coat so astoundingly. A gift, a love gift, utterly unasked for, by a sky palely and flamily igniting its carbon monoxides, by eyes dulled to a halt under bowlers. Oh my God, what am I, that these late mouths should cry open in a forest of frost, in the dawn of cornflowers. Nick and the Candlestick. I am a miner. The light burns blue. Waxy stalagmites drip and thicken. Tears the earthen womb exudes from its dead boredom. Black bat airs wrap me, raggy shawls, cold homicide. They weld to me like plums. Old cave of calcium, icicles, old echo. Even the newts are white, those holy joes. And the fish, the fish. Christ, their pains of ice, a vice of knives, a piranha religion drinking its first communion out of my live toes. The candle gulps and recovers its small altitude, its yellows hearten. Oh, love, how did you get here? Oh, embryo, remembering even in sleep your crossed position. The blood blooms clean, you ruby. The pain you wake to is not yours. Love, love, I have hung our cave with roses, with soft rugs, the last of Victoriana. Let the stars plummet to their dark address. Let the mercuric atoms that cripple drip into the terrible well. You are the one solid the spaces lean on, envious, with a baby in the barn. The brass atlas you inherited is hefting his milk pillar. He kneels, head bent, a panther head on a panther pelt, gnawing his forehead, each incisor a wide, bright horn. Panther mane squirming, a million gold worms down his back, a bearded Greek. Under the gold bowl of his navel, where his phallus and ball should be a panther claw, I leave you the mystery. It is not the firmament that makes him look so sick, this philosopher. Maybe it's the panther jaw, the beastly lobotomy. The mirror floats us at one candle power. We smile and stare. That's you, that's me. Lady Lazarus. I have done it again. 1 year in every 10 I manage it, a sort of walking miracle. My skin bright as a Nazi lampshade, my right foot a paperweight, my face a featureless, fine Jew linen. Peel off the napkin, oh my enemy. Do I terrify? Yes, yes, Herr Professor, it is I. Can you deny the nose, the eye pits, the full set of teeth? The sour breath will vanish in a day. Soon, soon the flesh the grave cave ate will be at home on me, and I a smiling woman. I'm only 30, and like the cat, I have 9 times to die. This is number 3. What a trash to annihilate each decade, what a million filaments. Peanut-crunching crowd shoves in to see them unwrap me hand and foot, the big strip sleeve. Gentlemen, ladies, these are my hands, my knees. I may be skin and bone, I may be Japanese. Nevertheless, I am the same identical woman. The first time it happened, I was 10. It was an accident. The second time I meant to last it out and not come back at all. I rocked shut to the seashell. They had to call and pick the worms off me like sticky pearls. Dying is an art, like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I've a call. It's easy enough to do it in a cell. It's easy enough to do it and stay put. The theatrical comeback in broad day to the same place, the same face, the same brute, amused shout, a miracle that knocks me out. There is a charge for the eyeing of my scars. There is a charge for the hearing of my heart. It really goes. And there is a charge, a very large charge, for a word or a touch or a bit of blood or a piece of my hair or my clothes. So, Herr Doctor, So, here enemy, I am your opus, I am your valuable, the pure gold baby that melts to a shriek. I turn and burn. Do not think I underestimate your great concern. Ash, ash, you poke and stir, flesh, bone. There is nothing there, a cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold filling. Hear God, hear Lucifer, beware, beware. Out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air.
What started you writing poetry?
I don't know what started me. I just wrote it from the time I was quite small. I guess I liked nursery rhymes, and I guess I thought I could sort of do the same thing. I wrote my first poem, my first published poem when I was 8 1/2. It came out in the Boston Traveler. And from then on, I suppose I've been a bit of a professional.
What sort of things did you write about when you began writing poetry?
Nature, I think. Birds, bees, spring, fall, all those subjects which are absolute gifts to the person who doesn't have, sort of any interior experiences to write about. I think that the coming of spring, the stars overhead, first snowfall and so on are gifts for a child, a young poet.
Now, jumping the years, can you say, are there any themes which particularly attract you now as a poet, things that you feel you would like to write about?
Perhaps this is an American thing. I've been very excited by what I feel is the new breakthrough that came with, say, Robert Lowell's life studies, this intense breakthrough into very serious, very personal, emotional experience, which I feel has been partly taboo. Robert Lowell's poems about his experiences in a mental hospital, for example, interest me very much. These peculiar, private, and taboo subjects I feel have been explored in recent American poetry. I think particularly of the poetess Anne Sexton, who writes also about her experiences as a mother who's had a nervous breakdown, as an extremely emotional and feeling young woman. And her poems are wonderfully craftsman-like poems, and yet they have a kind of emotional and psychological depth, which I think is something perhaps quite new, quite exciting.
Now, you as a poet, and as a person too, straddle the Atlantic, if I can put it that way, being an American yourself.
That's a rather awkward position, but I'll accept it.
On which side does your weight fall, if I can pursue the metaphor?
Well, I think that as far as language goes, I'm an American. I'm afraid I'm an American. My accent's American. My way of talk is an American way of talk. I'm an old-fashioned American. That's probably one of the reasons why I'm in England now and why I always stay in England. I'm about 50 years behind as far as my preferences go. And I must say the poets that excite me most are the Americans. There are very few contemporary English poets that I admire.
Does this mean that you think contemporary English poetry is somehow behind the times when compared with American?
No, I think it's in a bit of a straitjacket, if I may say so. There was an essay by Alvarez, A. Alvarez, the British critic. His arguments about the dangerousness of gentility in England are very pertinent, very true. And I must say that I am not very genteel, and I feel that gentility has a stranglehold. The neatness, the wonderful tidiness, which is so evident everywhere in England, is perhaps more dangerous than it would appear on the surface.
But don't you think, too, that there's this business of English poets who are labouring under the whole weight of something which in block capitals is called English literature?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I know when I was at Cambridge, this appeared to me. Young women would come up to me and say, how do you dare to write? How do you dare to publish a poem? Because of the criticism, the terrible criticism that falls upon one if one does publish. And the criticism is not of the poem as poem. I remember being appalled when someone criticized me for beginning just like John Donne, but not quite managing to finish like John Donne. And I felt the weight of English literature on me at that point. And I think the whole emphasis in England, in the university, on practical criticism, but not that so much as historical criticism, knowing what period a line comes from. This is almost paralyzing. In America, at university, we read what? T.S. Eliot, Dylan, Thomas, Yeats. That's where we began. Shakespeare floated in the background. I'm not sure I agree with this, but I think that for the young poet, the writing poet, it's not quite so frightening to go to university in America as it is in England, for these reasons.
You say, Sylvia, that you consider yourself an American, but when we listen to a poem like Daddy, which talks about Dachau and Auschwitz and Mein Kampf, now I have the impression that this is the sort of poem that a real American could not have written with the same feeling and grasp with which you have written it, because it doesn't mean so much. These names do not, I think, mean so much on the other side of the Atlantic, do they?
Well, now, you're talking to me as a general American. Well, in particular, my background is, may I say, German and Austrian. On one side, I'm a first-generation American. On one side, I'm a second-generation American. And so my concern, I must say, with concentration camps and so on is uniquely intense. And then again, I'm rather a political person as well. So I suppose that's what part of it comes from.
And as a poet, do you have a great and a keen sense of the historic?
I'm not a historian, but I find myself being more and more fascinated by history. And now I find myself reading more and more about history. I'm very interested in Napoleon at the present. I'm very interested in battles, in wars, in Gallipoli, or, the First World War and so on. And I think that as I age, I'm becoming more and more historical. I certainly wasn't at all in my early 20s.
Do your poems tend now to come out of books rather than come out of your own life?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that at all. I think my poems come immediately out of the sensuous and emotional experiences I have. But I must say I cannot sympathize with these cries from the heart that are informed by nothing except, a needle or a knife or whatever it is. I believe that one should be able to control and manipulate experiences, even the most terrifying, like madness, being tortured, this sort of experience. But one should be able to manipulate these experiences with an informed and intelligent mind. I think that personal experience is very important, but certainly it shouldn't be a kind of shut box and sort of mirror-looking narcissistic experience. I believe it should be relevant, and relevant to the larger things, the bigger things, such as Hiroshima and Dachau, and so on.
So behind the primitive emotional reaction, there must be an intellectual discipline.
I feel that very strongly. Having been an academic, having been tempted by the invitation to stay on, to become a PhD, a professor, and all that, one side of me certainly does respect all disciplines, as long as they don't ossify.
What about writers who've influenced you, perhaps that's the wrong word to use, have meant a lot to you?
There are very few. I find it hard to trace them, really. When I was at college, I was stunned and astounded by the moderns, by Dylan Thomas, by Yeats, by Auden even. At one point, I was absolutely wild for Auden. And everything I wrote was desperately Audenesque. Now, I begin to go backwards. I begin to look to Blake, for example. And then, of course, it's presumptuous to say that one is influenced by someone like Shakespeare. One reads Shakespeare, that's that.
Sylvia, one notices in reading your poems and in listening to your poems that there are two qualities which emerge very quickly and clearly. One is their lucidity, and I think these two qualities have something to do one with the other. Their lucidity and the impact they make on reading. Now, do you consciously design your poems to be both lucid and to be effective when they're read aloud?
No, I don't. May I say this, that the ones I read are very recent, and I have found myself having to read them aloud to myself, saying them to myself. Now, this is something I didn't do. For example, my first book, The Colossus, I can't read any of the poems aloud now. I didn't write them to be read aloud. They, in fact, quite privately bore me. Now, these ones that I have just read, the ones that are very recent, I've got to say them. I speak them to myself. And I think that this, in my own writing development, is quite a new thing with me. And whatever lucidity they may have comes from the fact that I say them to myself. I say them aloud.
Do you think this is an essential ingredient of a good poem, that it should be able to be read aloud effectively?
Well, I feel that. I do feel that now, and I feel that this development of recording poems, of speaking poems at readings, of having records of poets, I think this is a wonderful thing. I'm very excited by it. In a sense, there's a return, isn't there, to the old role of the poet, which was to speak to a group of people, to come across.
Or to sing to a group.
To sing to a group of people. Exactly.
Setting aside poetry for a moment, are there other things that you would like to write or that you have written?
Well, I shan't say I've become interested in prose. I always was interested in prose. As a teenager, I wrote short stories a lot, and I published short stories. And I always wanted to write the long short story. I wanted to write a novel. Now that I have attained, shall I say, a respectable age and have had experiences, I feel much more interested in prose, in the novel. I feel that in a novel, for example, you can get in toothbrushes and all the paraphernalia that one finds in daily life, and I find this more difficult in poetry. Poetry, I feel, is a tyrannical discipline. You've got to go so far, so fast, in such a small space that you've just got to burn away all the peripherals. And I miss them. I'm a woman. I like my little lares and penates. I like trivia. And I find that in a novel I can get more of life. Perhaps not such intense life, but certainly more of life. And so I've become very interested in novel writing as a result.
This is almost the Dr. Johnson sort of view, isn't it? Obviously he said that there are some things which are fit for inclusion in poetry and others which are not.
Well, of course, as a poet, I would say poof. I would say everything should be able to come into a poem, but I can't put toothbrushes in a poem. I really can't.
Do you find yourself much in the company of other writers, poets?
I much prefer doctors, midwives, lawyers, anything but writers. I think writers and artists are the most narcissistic people. I mustn't say this. I like many of them. In fact, a great many of my friends happen to be writers and artists. But I must say, what I admire most, or I certainly find myself looking toward, is the person who masters an area of practical experience and can teach me something. I mean, my local midwife has taught me how to keep bees. Well, she can't understand anything I write. And I find myself liking her, may I say, more than most poets. And among my friends, I find these people who know all about boats, or know about a certain sport, or know about how to cut somebody open and remove an organ. Well, I'm fascinated by this mastery of the practical. And I must say, I feel as a poet, one lives a bit on air, and I always like someone who can teach me something.
Is there anything else which you would rather have done than writing poetry? Because this is something, obviously, that takes up a great deal of one's daily life if one's going to succeed at it. Do you ever have any lingering regrets that you didn't do something else?
Well, I think if I had done anything else, I would have liked to be a doctor. And this is the sort of polar opposition to being a writer, I suppose. My best friends, when I was young, were always doctors. I used to dress up in a white gauze helmet and go around and see babies born, cadavers cut open. Well, this fascinated me, but I never could bring myself to disciplining myself to the point where I could learn all the details that one has to learn to be a good doctor. This is the sort of opposition. Somebody who deals directly with human experience is able to cure, to mend, to help, this sort of thing. I suppose if I have any nostalgia, it's this, but I console myself because I know so many doctors, and I may say that I think perhaps I'm happier writing about doctors than I would have been being one.
But basically, this thing of writing poetry is something which has been a great satisfaction to you.
Oh, satisfaction, yes. Water, bread, something absolutely essential. I find myself absolutely fulfilled when I have written a poem, when I'm writing one, having written one. Well, then you fall away very rapidly from having been a poet to becoming a sort of poet in rest, which isn't the same thing at all. But I think the actual experience of writing a poem is a magnificent one.